Have you ever felt small? Most of us have at some point in our lives. You, like me, are, after all, just a single person sharing a planet with around 8 billion other people at this one point of time alone. I'd say that there are around 1 trillion people that have come before us, and, unless we destroy ourselves first, there are more than likely 1 trillion more people that have yet to be born. All of this is on a single planet within a solar system of 8 planets, that itself is within a galaxy of at least 100 million solar systems. And then, even our galaxy is one of millions of galaxies, in a universe so vast it might literally be endless. How could you not feel small when you really think about it all? I think the question that's really important is, does this feeling leave you with fear or awe? While I understand the why, and maybe even a little of the how, somebody could be left with fear when faced with such tremendous scale, for me this feeling of smallness, this feeling of understanding how truly minute I am within the wider universe, how stupidly small the entire history of my species is, this knowledge has helped me with the feeling of powerlessness I've felt in regards to modern politics. Because of certain new laws passed within the United Kingdom where I live, it's no longer possible to talk out publicly about certain events. If you do, then there is a very real chance that you could face a prison sentence. One that, because of other anti-trans laws also passed by the UK, would sadly land any transgender folk like myself in the wrong prison. So yeah, I've been feeling small, since it's impossible to even protest freely for what you believe in anymore. You're unable to even talk about what you believe in publicly now. These laws and the general crackdown on the freedom of expression are not just limited to the UK, however, which is why I'm certain that this is a very real and common feeling for millions of people across the entire world right now. If you have been feeling powerless lately, then I hope that you get just as much out of this video as I got out of making it. Which brings me nicely back to the subject at hand, the theme of megalophobia / megalophoria. I will be examining several stories that I feel tackle this subject very well in some way. Each of these narratives, whether they be games, books, or entire fictional worlds connected via several games or books, all tackle truly massive scales, but I feel like they each do so in a different way. Scratchy, for example, tackles truly massive numbers, particularly in terms of currency. Elite Dangerous deals with the enormity of the galaxy that we exist in. A Short Stay in Hell attempts to put that scale into a human perspective. The Neuromancer trilogy deals with the kaleidoscope effect that we can see within the world around us, showing us that even things we think of as tiny are really massive when put into the right perspective. I'm no fool. With this video's length, this will most likely make for a good second screen or background listening. Despite that, I will be using the visual medium from time to time to show gameplay from certain games or to try to put the scale that I'm describing into perspective. So, if what I'm talking about does sound particularly interesting, maybe give your second screen a glance and enjoy what I've put together for you. With that being said, go ahead and pop this video onto that second screen, boot up the Elder Scrolls Online, Elite Dangerous, Old School RuneScape, or really any game or activity that you like to do with your second screen, and let's dig into this theme of megalophobia / megalophoria. Without any further ado, let's do further. We need to begin at the beginning, and that is understanding what I mean by megalophobia and by proxy, megalophoria. When trying to understand any word, the best place to start is the dictionary, so let's take a look. Our search starts off poorly as the Oxford English Dictionary, my standard dictionary as an English literature student, has no results for the word megalophobia. Oh well, let's not let that stop us. The other major dictionary I use is the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, which also doesn't have any results. As we're beginning to understand here, megalophobia isn't really a commonly used word, but I do assure you that it is used and it is a word. We're able to find our definition not within a standard dictionary, but instead on the Cleveland Clinic's website, which already tells us that this is a medical term as opposed to a more standard one. The Cleveland Clinic describes megalophobia as the following, quote, "Megalophobia is a type of anxiety disorder in which a person experiences intense fear of large objects. A person with megalophobia experiences intense fear and anxiety when they think of or are around large objects, such as large buildings, statues, animals, and vehicles. They often avoid situations or places that have large objects." End quote. And there we have it. Megalophobia is the fear of large things. We can break the word down into its two halves. Mega, which derives its meaning from the ancient Greek word megas, which means great, large, or mighty. And then we have phobia, which also comes from the ancient Greek, namely the word phobos, meaning fear, panic, or terror. Hence the word megalophobia, meaning fear of large things. While the Cleveland Clinic uses buildings, statues, and vehicles for their examples, this phobia can also include people that experience intense fear or anxiety when they think of the scale of the universe. This means that megalophobia shares some overlap with another phobia, astrophobia, which is the irrational fear of space, stars, the night sky, and is often linked to the vastness of the universe. I chose to focus my video essay here on megalophobia as opposed to astrophobia, since we'll be looking at truly massive things and places that are not limited to just space. But we will also be covering the tremendous size of the universe as well. The other word we're dealing with in this video is one of my own creation, Megalaphoria, which means that we won't find its meaning within any dictionary or websites. That doesn't mean that we can't break it down and understand what it means, because we can. We already understand what mega means, which just leaves us with phoria. I have to put my hands up here and admit that this doesn't really mean what I wanted it to. Phoria, often found within the words euphoria or dysphoria, simply means bearing, carrying, or bringing. I used it because of its connection to the word euphoria, which translates from ancient Greek into good bearing, but also means extreme happiness within modern English, to be euphoric. The actual term I should have used to mean what I intended the word megalophoria to mean is megalophilia, meaning love of large things or spaces. I opted not to because of the connection the suffix philia has in modern English. After all, if I described myself as a megalophile, I would almost certainly get some odd looks. Which is why I instead opted for a portmanteau of the words megalophobia and euphoria to produce the word megalophoria. This word is intended to mean a love or comfort at large things or spaces. Personally, I love learning about bits of etymology or the origins of words we use, which is why I thought it was important to go into the meaning and history of the words megalophobia and megalophoria. This is partly why I got into English literature. I love words. I love how we use words to convey everything. Basically, feelings, information, abstract ideas, everything. From the way you feel to what you're doing, to what you intend to do, to why you intend to do it, to the psychological reasons between why you feel you need to do it. Everything is put into language. I just love words. I really do just love words. So I thought it'd be interesting to go into that. But to move on, one of the largest natural things that we can find on our planet is a mountain. These massive land masses are truly daunting. They are so impressively gigantic that most of their summits are so high up that the oxygen levels are dangerously low, meaning that humans require oxygen tanks to survive there. They're just simply that high up. And no game captures the enormous scale of mountains better than Cairn. So, let's look at it. Cairn is a shockingly simple game. You start at the base of a mountain, Mount Kami, and you must climb to its summit. Now this starts off as a fun challenge. After all, the climbing gameplay here is, simply put, the best I've experienced in any game to date. Which means that the first 2 hours that you are playing this game are really enjoyable. They're a really enjoyable challenge. Sure, you may have the odd fall, but you're equipped with enough climbing pylons to reduce the danger of these mistakes. You'll never really lose too much progress for it to ever be more than a very mild inconvenience, meaning that the first couple of hours are honestly a really good, a really fun, enjoyable little challenge. After a certain point, however, things go from an enjoyable challenge to just straight up difficult. There is this one section that really tested me. I legit put the game down for a day. I got really frustrated with it, and I wasn't sure if I would come back to it. But I did, and I'm glad I did, because eventually I managed to overcome the section of Mount Kami that saw me fail far more times than I'd really like to admit here. But when I did conquer that bit, I found myself at the point of no return. Now, I don't want to spoil the story here, so I'm not going to say too much, because it's really just worth experiencing for yourself. That being said, there is a point where the game offers you the chance to stop and head back down with another climber you meet along the way. Now, within the canon of this story, within this world, no human has ever made it past this point that you get to. And the mountain is covered with the remains of others that have continued and attempted to reach Kami's summit. There's this graveyard of all of their packs that this person who acts as a guardian and essentially lives on this mountain at this point of no return and tells people to turn around. Any who don't heed his warning, he collects their packs and he keeps them in this room so that they can act as a graveyard for those that continue on and never come back down. And the game is screaming at you to turn back here. Continuing is a fool's errand. It's a certain death trap, as proven by the numerous corpses above you. Players can either continue on, or they can turn back, and you'll get one of two endings depending on your choice here. I've played this game multiple times and I've seen both endings now, and I'm not going to say which each path leads to, but what I will say is that on my first playthrough, I continued the climb. I continued to try and reach Kami's summit. I started this goddamn game to climb a mountain. I'm not going to give up when I'm so close to the summit. And boy, did Cairn really take its gloves off at this point. It's so easy to die at this point. It's truly a nightmare. One that forces you to respect the sheer scale of the land you're climbing. This is where I think we're able to see the phobia within the Megalophobia. The indifference this mountain has for mere human lives. It makes no difference to Kami if the minute apes that climb its colossal mass live or die. Now, you could argue that the areas lower down on the mountain benefit from the nourishment that our corpses provide the soil and land that they decompose on. But after a certain point, even this stops being true, and the mountain becomes so cold that bodies freeze solid, failing to decompose as Kami rejects even our deaths. We are small, and our deaths are meaningless, worthless, rejected by the very land we climb. True megalophobia. For context, Mount Kami is said to be 9,005 meters tall. That's 157 meters taller than Mount Everest within our real world. While this is interesting information, if you're like me, then these numbers are really hard to understand, which is where our next game, Scritchy Scratchy, comes into play, as it nails the concept of large numbers. Scritchy Scratchy is a game about scratch cards. You start the game off rather simply and humbly by working your day job washing plates. Now you earn $1 per plate you clean. Not bad money really. When you've earned $10, you're able to purchase your very first scratch card, a 2-win card. This is simple. You match 2 symbols and you win. The better the 2 symbols, the more you win. This is the basic cycle of the whole game. You scratch cards, earn money, buy more cards, earn more money, and along the way, you're able to upgrade your coins and luck. The more you scratch a specific card, the more that card levels up, allowing you to earn more money from it. After the 2-win card comes the mini scratch card, which costs a hefty $100 each, but you're able to win even more with just a little bit of luck. Then you start buying the apple tree card, which costs $2,000 each. While this feels like a lot, it's nothing yet. As these games tend to do, things continue to escalate. Eventually, you're spending multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars per card, but earning 50 million average per card. Then you finish upgrading the lucky cat cards, leaving only one more card to try. Now this one's a little different to the others. The final chance card offers you a chance to win everything. But if you lose, it costs you everything, meaning your life. But you don't really know that yet, so you scratch it and you most likely die. As you do, you overhear a conversation between 2 unseen people. They seem to be trying to arrange for a win on the final chance card. This whole system of scratch cards and upgrades is a machine designed to manufacture luck. I think here is a good point to pause the game and talk about numbers. I want to really get this point across. So, for those watching the screen, I will be putting the numbers I mention here on screen, complete with every 0 within them, so that you can understand how big we're talking about here. For those of you not watching the screen, you might want to just look over here for a bit, just so you can see how large these numbers really are. Everyone is familiar with your basic numbers. You have 1, 10, 100 and even 1,000. To understand these numbers, I find it easiest to think of them as money. £1, which is my local currency, so I'll be using pounds. £1 is pretty small. £10 is not a lot, but it's also not nothing. Now £100 is getting pretty costly, and £1,000 is an expensive item. After these more basic numbers come the large numbers that we're familiar with. 1 million, 1 billion and 1 trillion. These are big numbers, but we hear them talked about a lot. Yearly profits from corporations are mentioned in the millions. The richest people in the world are worth billions, and some of the larger countries in the world are trillions of dollars in debt. These are the sort of large numbers that we do hear talked about, and we are used to hearing about. Next come the large numbers that we barely hear because they are just so stupidly large. Quadrillion, quintillion and sextillion. If you want to understand how big these numbers are, then understand that the total global GDP is approximately $110 trillion. And that's 1/10 of a quadrillion. If you had a quadrillion, then you would have so much money that money would become worthless. Now, 1 quadrillion is 1/100th of a quintillion, which itself is 1/100th of a sextillion. Remember that if you need a visual aid, whenever I say one of these large numbers, it will be on screen, complete with all of its zeros. These numbers keep going. After a sextillion comes a septillion, then an octillion, and then a nonillion, onto a decillion. I could keep going, these numbers do keep going, but by the time we get to a decillion, we're beyond any real understanding. For context, if we went back in time 1,000 seconds, then we would find ourselves back only 16 minutes and 40 seconds. If we went back in time 1 trillion seconds, then we'd end up within the late Stone Age, before humans had started to farm. if we jumped back in time 1 sextillion seconds, then we'd predate the Big Bang by a lot, like 31 trillion years a lot. The entire history of the universe, from the Big Bang all the way to the heat death of the universe, would fit inside 1 decillion seconds. These are big numbers, stupidly big numbers. And I wanted you to understand that, because by the end of Scratchy, you're earning nonillions of dollars per lucky card. If you're anything like me, then you'll be dying to find out what you win when you manage to win on that final chance card. After all, what more could you want when you've got more money than there exists on the entire planet? The answer is a bit of an odd one. You gain the ability to scratch away everything. First of all, you scratch away the ticket itself, then the table, then the room you're in, then the city backdrop, then the very land itself. Before long, all that's left is the sun, which itself is ultimately victim to your scratching. You don't really win anything, instead you destroy. But I guess that makes sense. What more could you get after you've already gained so much? The only thing you could ever have beyond all the money and power you've acquired during your hours of scratching is an end to the very solar system itself. After you've acquired everything, you are left with nothing. A strange end to a strange game, but one that's lots of fun. I really did enjoy my time with this game. It's rather cheap, only £5. Now that's a very small number compared to what we've been talking about. Even less if it's on sale, so I really would recommend that you pick it up and indulge on its compulsive fun. Don't worry, I haven't spoiled the whole game. There are a bunch of achievements to get and a secret ending to find. Now I wanted to talk about Scratchy because it does a wonderful job of introducing us to massive numbers, and these numbers will help us understand the scale of our next story, A Short Stay in Hell. A Short Stay in Hell is a novella by Stephen L. Peck based on a short story called The Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges. Hope I pronounced that right. Anyone familiar with either The Library of Babel or A Short Stay in Hell will already understand why this story is in a video essay about megalophobia. The back of my copy has a quote from author Dan Wells, who describes A Short Stay in Hell as profound and disturbing. I think I can agree on the profound, but I do disagree on the disturbing. Now, why is this? Well, to understand that, we need to understand the story itself, so let's break this down with a good old-fashioned basic plot summary. Soren Joransson dies of cancer in his 40s. As a devout Mormon, he expects to join his wife in heaven, share stories of the gospel with other worthy members as they await the day of judgment when they will ascend to their own godhood. Instead, after Soren dies, he finds himself in a waiting room with other recently deceased folk, all waiting to be sorted into a suitable hell by a demon. This demon explains to the group that the only correct faith was Zoroastrianism, an ancient religion from Iran thousands of years ago. After some protest from the damned souls, this rather friendly demon selects a hell for each person present based on their lives on Earth. Since Soren enjoyed literature, the demon sends him to the Library of Babel. I am now going to read an extract from the book. I surveyed my surroundings carefully for the first time. I was in a long corridor about 12 feet wide. Running along one side of the hall was a thick metal pipe-like railing, about 4 feet high, intended, no doubt, to keep me from falling into a fearsome chasm. The railing was painted a soft brownish red and fashioned with round corners and turns, like the low fences that front the wire cages at the zoo. It extended down the endless hall until it disappeared into a vanishing point, almost as if I were looking into a parallel face in mirrors that gave the illusion they go on forever and ever. looking across the railing to the other side of the chasm, which seemed as bottomless as the corridor seemed long. I could see I was on the upper floor of a vast building. The floors on the other side of the chasm looked like a series of matching floors to the one on which I stood. The floors across the 100-foot span extended upwards and downward as far as the eye could see. On every floor were rows upon rows of books, millions of them. You will soon see what a terrible underestimate this is. It struck me as nothing so much as a prison block, with books arranged on shelves on each floor rather than jail cells. The floor was carpeted with the drab, grey, highly functional carpet that seems ubiquitous in public buildings. People were scattered everywhere on both sides of the abyss, some standing, staring blankly, others walking in a daze, some weeping uncontrollably, some kneeling in desperate prayer as I had done last night. Everyone looked as stunned and frightened as I felt. No one looked interested in talking, and everyone seemed as preoccupied as I was with trying to understand this strange afterlife into which we had unexpectedly been tossed. I turned back to investigate my surroundings. In the vicinity of where I slept, I found a break in the shelves of books. Looking over the rail to the other side where I had a panoramic view of this strange building, I could see that such breaks in the rows of books occurred about every 300 yards or so on each floor. On each one there was a round clock with large black hands and a digital date readout in the center of the clock face. In front of every clock in the hallway was a small kiosk near the railing. Next to the clock was a sign with a set of rules and advice. There was also an open entrance into a small room. I peered into the closest and found it led to a small chamber, furnished with 7 neatly made beds, the frame being constructed of the same metal that fashioned the railing. On each bed was a mattress, fitted sheets, a pillow and a blanket, and a smock identical to the one I was wearing. There was also a drinking fountain near the entrance. Attached to the little bedroom was a spacious bathroom with a shower, sink and a generous full-length mirror on the wall opposite to the sink. There were no necessities like toothbrushes or razors of any kind. However, there was toilet paper, tissue and soap in a little pump bottle. Complete with everything else, Soren finds a useful sign that details where he is and what it is he's there to do, as well as a few rules to make his stay in hell more pleasant. This sign read thus: Welcome to Hell. This hell is based upon a short story by Georges Louis Borges from your world called the Library of Babel. Here you will find all the books that can possibly be written. When you are ready to leave, find the book describing your earthly life story, without errors, e.g. in spelling, grammar, etc., and submit the story through the slot below this sign. If the story is accepted, you will be admitted into a glorious heaven filled with wonders and joys beyond your imagination. During your stay, you may be interested in reading a book on Zoroastrianism. By special arrangement, there is one on every floor. The other books are randomized. The food kiosk will provide whatever you would like to eat. Just ask for it. We would ask that you follow a few simple rules during your stay in hell. Please be kind. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Failure to do this will bring unhappiness and misery to you and your fellow citizens. Do not get discouraged. Remember, nothing lasts forever. Someday this will be a distant memory. 3. Please leave towels on the floor if you wish them to be cleaned. Hang up those you wish to use again. 4. Books not in your possession will be returned to their original place on the stacks every night. A book will be considered in your possession if you are touching it. 5. If you are killed, you will be restored to life on the following day. Please try to avoid death as much as possible. 6. All contracts, bonds, commitments, covenants, pledges and promises entered into prior to your entering hell are null and void. This includes, but is not limited to, debt, marriage, natural births and adoptions, requirement of citizenship, military obligations, student loans, etc. 7. Remember, you are never really alone, although it may feel like it for very long stretches of time. 8. Please don't write on, mark or mar library materials. Although repairs are made nightly, we would like to keep repairs to a minimum. 9. Lastly, you are here to learn something. Don't try to figure out what it is. This can be frustrating and unproductive. We hope you enjoy your stay here. We have done all we can to make your stay a pleasant and instructive one. More souls than just Sorens have been sent to this library, and so he quickly finds himself involved in a community of like-minded academics. This group forms an organised university and sets about their task of searching the library for any useful books. After 102 years, this university has found very little in the way of coherent text. This begins to erode the psyche of those trapped within the library. The near impossibility of their task begins to cause tensions. These hostilities eventually lead to the emergence of a vicious and violent cult that believes it's their divine purpose to punish the sinful. Soren ends up throwing himself over the balcony and plummeting down into the pitch-black darkness of the gap between the two halves of the library. He's been falling for days already by the time we get to this next extract. I was getting very thirsty. I was hungry too, but the thirst was the worst. Throughout the day, I passed hundreds of drinking fountains and kiosks and could do nothing but watch them fly by. My mouth was parched and my tongue felt thick in my mouth. I tried to take my mind off things by practicing my flying. I found that by pulling my arms inside my smock and bowing them out under the fabric, I could get a pretty good control of my direction. I learned to increase or decrease my speed and get some measure of navigation, but the downward motion dominated everything I did, and even when I was getting some horizontal movement, I was still hurtling downward at an amazing rate. I remembered that in the air, there was a limit to how fast you could fall because of friction. I recalled with my perfect memory that it was around 120 miles per hour. As the day came to a close, my thirst was unbearable. I fell asleep and dreamed of drinking. As the day came to a close, my thirst was unbearable. All my bones began aching. I fell asleep and dreamed of drinking, but no matter how much I drank in these dreams, the water did not seem to sate my thirst. My throat continued to ache, so I would try and drink more, but nothing would change. I woke up many times in the night, so thirsty that was all I wanted. Why would God have structured this hell such that every wound would be instantly healed in the morning, but only the kiosk would slake my hunger and thirst? The next 3 days were a blur. My tongue was swollen in my mouth, and all my bones ached. I thought I heard people offering me water. At one point, I thought Rachel was falling beside me carrying a pitcher of orange juice, which she was trying to pass to me, but every time I reached for it, she would drift out of reach. Sleeping, dreaming, awake, all became confused. I could no longer see clearly, and everything was a blur. Finally, I must have died of thirst because I woke one morning feeling great. I could have used some breakfast, but I was no hungrier than I usually was in the morning. It felt wonderful after so many days of misery and discomfort. Still falling, still flying past floors with occasional people, but they were getting sparser. Sometimes many floors would pass before I'd see another group. How far down was the bottom? Shouldn't I have reached it by now? It's here that we really begin to see the true scale of the library. For context, it takes the average person around 7 days to die of thirst, although some can survive up to 10 days. Since Soren dies of dehydration, we can summarise that he's been falling for at least 7 days solid. If a person were to jump from the upper stratosphere of Earth, the very edge of what we know as space, with no parachute, just free fall down, it would take them around 5 minutes to hit the floor. That's falling from 41 kilometers or 25 miles up. Soren manages to fall for a week solid without the bottom of the library even coming into view. Now eventually, and with a lot of trial and error, the errors often resulting in a violent death I want to add, Soren does manage to fall back into one of the many floors of the library. And it's here he finds Master Tuk, a mathematician that has worked out the true size of the library. I really need to read this section to you for it to carry the full impact that it does in the story. Mr. Tuk was sitting on his bed, his head clutched in his hands. Mr. Took? I asked. He looked up. He didn't answer at first, so I asked again. Mr. Took? What? He said coldly. I explained I was new to the floor and was from about 30,000 miles up. He shook his head and asked sarcastically, So, are there still only white English-speaking Americans even up that high? I should have known. What do you want? He seemed distant. I hesitated. I was just wondering about the sorrow? He laughed at me and threw pages torn from a book at me. The margins were cluttered with charcoal equations, scratched out using a sharpened bone and something burnt from the kiosk. Look at these. It will answer your question. Look at them and weep, because they are going to tell you exactly what it means to be in this hell. Look! Look! I was frightened that for a minute he was going to get violent, and I backed away. But he just sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. I picked up the paper and stared blankly at the calculations, but I could not make head nor tails of them. How long did you work on this? I asked after his breathing had returned to normal. He lifted his head and looked at me. What? You've been doing this for a long time? Oh, I had an estimate in just a few minutes, but the exact answer has taken me a while. I did not want to believe my guess. What are they, if you don't mind me asking? He let out a sigh. I calculated the number of books in the library. He stopped and looked at the papers he had thrown at me. How many are there? I asked. Is there a finite number? This was one of the most discussed questions in hell. Our university, despite some people trained in calculus, had no one versed in probability theory. Had he really calculated the number of books, which after all was generally believed to be finite, although very large? Oh, I could feel my excitement growing. How many? I asked, with a little more tension in my voice, realizing the implications of what I was asking. 95 raised to the 1,312,000th power. That's a lot, right? You don't understand. In our old universe, there were only 10 raised to the 78th electrons. Wait, you mean there are more books in this library than there were electrons in our whole previous universe? Oh, way more. Then he added with an evil, mischievous look. In fact, I've calculated the dimensions of our library. You say you're from 30,000 miles up. Did you wonder when you would have hit the bottom? I nodded, slowly. He laughed bitterly. Well, if you were somewhere near the middle of hell, you only have 10 to the 1,297,377 light years to go. I'll never forget his cold laugh. You have over 1 million more orders of magnitude light years to fall than there were electrons in our old universe. I fell back. Rachel! I cried out. I'll never get to the bottom. The man shook his head in disgust. Oh, you'll reach the bottom. Just not for a very, very long time. The size of the library is laid out bare here. The width and depth of the library is 7.16 to the power of 1,297,369 light years wide and deep. A light year, by the way, is the distance that light can travel in a year. That's around 5.88 trillion miles. I'll say this again. The library is 7.16 to the power of 1,297,369 light years squared. I cannot stress to you how massive, how stupidly, unimaginably large this is. You could fit our universe, not our galaxy, no, the entire universe within the library, literally millions of times over, and still have space to spare. This number, if written down, is a 10 with 1,109,126 zeros after it. Similar to the previous section, I wanted to put this number on screen, to have the entire screen covered with a stupid number of zeros, so much that they blotted out the B-roll footage I had running in the background. But when I attempted to paste this number into Photoshop to create a transparent PNG layer for this purpose, I couldn't. It was just too large a number to paste into Photoshop. We spoke about large numbers when talking about Scratchy earlier. The largest large number that we have a name for is a centillion. This number, if written down as 100 followed by 303 zeros. Now this is just the tiniest fraction of the tiniest fraction of 7.16 to the power of 1,297,369. There is no number large enough to convey the number of light years the library is wide and deep. The closest thing we have is a Googleplex. Now a Googleplex does have some interesting mathematical properties, but what it all boils down to in its meaning is a finite number that is so large that it is, for all intents and purposes, infinite. The Library of Babel that Soren finds himself trapped within is a Googleplex squared light years large. I know that most people would find this terrifying, this library that is so vast, so enormous, that I might as well be a single beaver trying to hold back all the water in the universe by myself when faced with its scale. But oddly, I don't. To be completely honest, I actually find it the opposite. I find the idea of the library calming, comforting, and dare I say even relaxing. Everything I do within this library, because of its scale, both in terms of physical size, but also in terms of time, would simultaneously be pointless and incredibly important. I could literally sleep for 1,000,000 years, just have a 1,000,000-year nap, and it wouldn't matter. I could search for interesting books for a couple of millennia, before taking a couple of billion years off to learn how to skydive using towels and spare clothes if fashioned into a sort of parachute. This library is a place where I get to decide what is and isn't important. Ultimately, the task of finding my book will be completed. Similar to a Googleplex, my time within the library is finite. Even if it's so long that for all intents and purposes it might as well be infinite. Now what that means, what I mean by that is that I will eventually find my book. It's inevitable. And because of this simple, immutable fact, I don't really need to worry about finding it. Eventually I will have found my book. I will have posted it into one of the many slots available under the rules, and I will have left the library behind and entered into whatever heaven awaits me. One of two possibilities exist with this heaven. Either its time is infinite, in which case it will eventually dwarf whatever time I spend within the library, or it's nothing, it's non-existence, in which case my time in the library won't matter. While I am terrified of that non-existence, that not existing that comes after life and before life, within this library, I know that I don't have to post my book into that slot until I'm ready to confront both possibilities. This means that I have a Googleplex number of years to come to terms with my possible non-existence. Unlike the real world, the library is a place where I don't have anything to fear. I have nothing to worry about. Its vast scale provides the perfect environment for me, one where I have control, more control than I have in life. Sure, it may take me centillions of years to find my book, but I know that I will, and when I do, I get to decide when I post it into the slot. This is why when I think about how I would deal with my own short stay in hell, it doesn't cause me any sense of megalophobia, but instead, a wonderful sense of megalophoria. It's not just Stephen L. Peck's wonderful novella that gives me this feeling. I also find myself feeling this sense of relaxation when playing one of my 2 MMOs of choice, Elite Dangerous. Elite Dangerous is a game I love. While I intend to make more videos talking about it in more depth than I will here, all you need to understand about it for now within this one video is that it's a game about flying spaceships through space. Now, space is a hard thing to get right in video games. Lots of games try, most of them fail. I find only a couple succeed. And Elite Dangerous is one of those very few that do succeed. There are many reasons that games can fail at space, but we can broadly break them down into one of 2 big facts about space that games struggle with. It's big and it's complicated. Games like No Man's Sky capture the size of space very well, but they dumb it down too much in my opinion. What really puts me off about No Man's Sky is that it ignores science so that it can create a version of space that's easier, simpler, and just ultimately more comfortable to navigate. Its version of space ignores gravity, has planets that don't rotate on their axes, nor do they orbit their star. In fact, if you actually try to fly to a star, you'll find that every star in this game are just part of an unreachable skybox. They literally don't exist. Every planet you find has an atmosphere. Every solar system is inhabited. There's so many ways that the science is just wrong in No Man's Sky. Not unintentionally wrong, intentionally wrong to make the gameplay fit what it's going for. Basically, its universe is easy, simple, and extremely friendly to the player. Fans of this game will no doubt know all of this. For them, No Man's Sky isn't really about space travel. It's about exploring a virtual, randomly generated universe that's capable of creating some of the most bizarre, remarkable, and downright just bloody interesting places in all of gaming. It's about exploration, basically, not science. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the biggest fan of No Man's Sky, but even I have to give it its fucking praise, saying that it is one of the very few games that captures this sense of just exploration as well as it does. If you want a game where you can explore, not travel through space, because it gets space very wrong, but if you want a game about exploration, not about space, about exploration, there are few better than No Man's Sky. Personally though, I love space, and it gets space so wrong that it really bugs me. So I really can't say that No Man's Sky is the game for me. But then we have other games that have kind of the opposite problem. They're kind of the inverse of No Man's Sky. And I think a wonderful example of this type of game would be Kerbal Space Program, or KSP for short. KSP captures the complexity of space and space travel better than what I'm going to say is literally any other game ever made, at least that I'm aware of, in my opinion. But what it fails at is the scale of the universe. Every planet is notably smaller than most real planets. Now, for comparison, Earth has a diameter of approximately 12,756 kilometers, while the planet you start on, Kerbal, in Kerbal Space Program, has a diameter of only 1,200 kilometers. That's smaller than our moon, by the way. And this shrinkage applies as much to the distance between things as it does to the orbital bodies themselves. The distance between the Earth and the moon is 384,400 kilometers, while the distance between Kerbin and the Mun is only 12,000 kilometers. KSP fails to capture the true scale of space. That's okay, because it's not really a game that cares about this scale. It's about the physics of space travel and making that into an interesting game. Calculating optimal weights for takeoff, managing stable orbits, surviving the heat of entering a planet's atmosphere, and so on. All of this complexity is captured so incredibly well in KSP, but everything's smaller in KSP. It fails at that scale, but it nails that science better than any game I'm aware of. What Elite Dangerous does so well, and oh, the reason I love it, is that it deals with both the complexity of flying a ship in space, while also capturing the immense size of space. I will readily admit that it does make some concessions to both the scale and complexity of space in some ways. You can't accidentally fly past the event horizon of a black hole and find yourself suddenly spaghettified. Orbiting a planet is managed by your ship's computer automatically, and getting from one star to another can be done in seconds thanks to the FSD drives simply jumping you there, travelling you thousands of times the speed of light to get to the next star within seconds. Yet, while playing, the game manages to deliver a feeling of complexity and scale married together that's really not found anywhere else, in my opinion. Planets rotate on their axes while orbiting their nearest stars, meaning that if you sit on any one planet or moon long enough, you will see a perfectly realistic sunrise or sunset. Planets actually have seasons, and moons, they have seasons because of how they rotate. Who is going to sit on a single planet, like a single orbital body, long enough in Elite Dangerous to actually witness its seasons? Like 0.0000001% of Elite Dangerous player base will experience that. But they will, and Frontier, the developers of Elite Dangerous, they fucking know that shit. So they make it so it is, because, yeah, sure, that's only important to a mere handful of players, but it is important to that handful of players. This player spent a year living on one moon in Elite Dangerous, and they catalogued their entire experience. They've made like a fucking report on their experience, and it is from beginning to end really fucking good reading. Like, I'm linking it in the top right corner in one of them little tags, and if I can't manage that, I will add it in the description. And yeah, because fucking hell, that's interesting reading. And that's the sort of realism I'm talking about. Like, this shit feels realistic and it feels complicated because holy shit, they've created all of this. I love this. This was a game that was made for me, I feel like. Just me. Like, it's Elite Dangerous is on my same frequency of fucking crazy. It's because it really captures the vastness of the universe almost perfectly, in my opinion. It could be better. There could be walkable interiors, and we could go on to populated planets with an atmosphere, and you know, I could wish for a game that will probably never exist, but as it is, I think it's as close to perfection for a space game as we probably will ever get. Now, this universe is massive. This is where I think we start to see the megalophobia within Elite Dangerous. This galaxy is crazy big. There are literally billions of planets. Billions! This is stupidly large. So much larger than our human minds can really comprehend. In this sense, few games capture both megalophobia and cosmophobia better than the Elite Dangerous games. This one game is massive. Literally, it's a massively multiplayer online game. There are thousands of players existing all around you while you're playing. It is just within the game's nature as an MMO where we begin to see the Megalaphoria. This is a living galaxy that you can see and affect via the power play system. There exist three major factions: the Empire, the Alliance, and the Independent groups. You, as a player, can build bases or space stations, form squadrons, and control military frigates, all while allied with one of these three factions. When you or your allies trade or work for one of these factions, attack their resources and interact with them in a myriad of other ways, you subtly change the ebb and flow of power between the factions. Despite the massive scale of this galaxy, you can make a difference. Sure, you won't ever be the center of this world, you are only ever one player after all, but as a single pilot, you are one brick within a massive building, one part of a much larger whole, and you can make a difference to this world. While you're small, only a single player, you're far from being powerless. You can sway the direction of these massive governments if you choose to. And I love this. It shows us how in real life we're able to get together and sway the massive governments around us via protest and coordinated demand. The power of protest can be seen in just how much our governments are afraid of it. This is why they're cracking down on it so much. Don't let them remove your power. Vote for parties that want to protect your right to protest. Then get out there and damn well protest. Because this is where our real power lies. So please use it. Be a part of something larger than yourself. Understand that while the world we exist in is massive, we still have power to affect it. We're a small part of something colossal. Embrace the Megalaphoria instead of the Megalophobia. Join together and fight as one united whole for a better world, a kinder tomorrow, a more equal future, and a legacy you can be proud of. While you won't ever change the universe, the Milky Way galaxy, or even Sol, or really even Earth, you will be able to shift the direction of your local national government, and fucking hell, that's power. I think our next and final subject shows how perspective is important when thinking about scale, so let's move on to the Neuromancer series of books, otherwise known as the Sprawl Trilogy. The Neuromancer series, otherwise known as the Sprawl Trilogy, is a set of 4 books that tell a story set in one of the first real cyberpunk worlds. Author William Gibson could very well be seen as the grandfather of the cyberpunk genre. The Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop RPG and its follow-up video games Cyberpunk 2077 are very heavily inspired by this particular series. I'd say that the Cyberpunk 2020 series is an unofficial adaptation of at least the world of Neuromancer. While reading these novels, it's very easy to believe that they're set in the same world as the Cyberpunk 2020 games. And I mean that as nothing but a compliment, by the way. After all, if you're going to get inspiration, then Neuromancer is one hell of a starting point. I'd also be lying if I denied the hard work that author Mike Pondsmith has put into making his world of Night City stand apart from its inspiration of Neuromancer. Still, if you like one, then you will almost certainly like the other. In fact, I'd say it's without a doubt that you'll like the other. So, if you enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077, I'd say pick this series up. They're really good. And because I recommend them so highly, I'm not going to spoil the story for the entire trilogy. And that's because, again, I really would urge you to read them. They're fantastic books. But I will be giving a brief rundown of the elements that are important to the point I want to make here. This will not spoil the entire series. Believe me, it won't. Neuromancer, or the Sprawl Trilogy as it's sometimes called, includes a trilogy of books that tell a connected story, and one final book that features an anthology of stories all set within the same world. Neuromancer, the first book in the trilogy, and this features a hacker called Chase, and he's roped into a heist with a woman named Molly, who's a shady and very heavily augmented woman. Both of these characters are hired by Armitage, a merc with no past, and who himself seems to be controlled by a shadowy figure. I'm not going to go into that mystery because I don't want to spoil the book. The only important thing is that as the trio continue their job, They end up uniting two halves of an AI, Neuromancer and Wintermute. And once Neuromancer and Wintermute are united, these two halves become something much larger than humanity. It quickly takes control of the net. That's a bit of a misunderstanding, to be honest. It more absorbs the net, becoming all human knowledge and connection. This super consciousness is now free, and humanity is far too small to even have a chance of understanding it, let alone stopping it. The first book ends with this super consciousness contacting Chase, and here it reveals that it's made contact with another super consciousness from the Alpha Centauri galaxy. This super consciousness is communicating from across galaxies. During the second novel, Count Zero, we learn a little more about this super consciousness. Or should I say super consciousness is, because it's duplicated itself, and they now go by Loa, named after spirits within the voodoo religion. But this is because a group of Jamaican hackers have contacted and now follow the commands of these Loa. And I think we can see another connection between Cyberpunk 2077 and Neuromancer here, with these Jamaican hackers and Cyberpunk's voodoo boys. The Loa are a key part of this plot, but at no point do we ever learn what they're up to. And I like this, as I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The way that the humans and the Loa interact is very similar to how humans and cells interact. In a sense, I feel this whole story is one about evolution. You see, animals didn't just pop into existence. First of all, cells started to feed on proteins. Then these cells reproduced, making more cells, and then these cells started to work together within each other even, becoming multi-celled life forms. Over millions of years, these cells did what cells do and grew, working together in systems until they became complex enough to become something new, animals. These animals continued to evolve, first into very simple fish, then larger, more complex fish, then they left the water and continued to evolve. Millions of years later, you had tiny mammals, and even more massive reptiles. Then all the reptiles died when a big old rock slammed into the planet, and the mammals continued to evolve. And eventually you had the first ever Homo erectus, that itself would evolve into what we are, humans. And humans did what humans do. We were clever, so we started to use tools. We learned to harness fire, and after that we even started farming. All of this led into the first ever country, which by the way was Iran, if you're wondering. The first ever human country was Iran. Little interesting fact. Along the way to this civilization, we started to dig up ore from within the earth itself, and we smelted this ore into metals, and we crafted these metals into machines, refined these machines until we had computers, and advanced these computers until we had created the digital consciousnesses of Neuromancer and Wintermute. Case, Molly and Armitage merged these two consciousnesses into one super consciousness, and thus the Loa were born. Within Count Zero, the Loa are operating beyond what we humans can comprehend, and this mirrors the interaction between humans and cells. When Alan Turing created the first computer, the cells within his body had no idea what they were doing, yet they did it. Within the Sprawl trilogy, humans have no idea what the Loa are doing, yet we do it. Us humans are vital parts of the Loa. We are as integral to them as our cells are to us. And I find this beautiful because it shows us both how small we are while at the same time proving how vitally important we are. Humanity is a small but integral part of something massive within the Loa, just as our cells are a small but integral part of something massive within ourselves. It's like a fractal. You can zoom in or out, but at every level you will find something existing as a small part of something larger than itself. The nucleotides within our cells have no idea what the cells are doing, while the cells have no idea what we humans are doing, while we have no idea what the Loa are doing, and there is very likely something above even the Loa. So, no matter how small, or even how large you feel, it's worth remembering that there are always things above and below you, above and below us all. You're never really small, you're just looking at the situation from the wrong perspective. You are important. Maybe not to the universe, maybe not to the galaxy or the solar system, but here on Earth, you are important. Your partner, your friends, your family, your community, and those around you depend on you to some extent. So you are important. What I'm trying to say is, if you're ever feeling small, if the megalophobia is getting you down, then maybe you just need to look at the world around you rather than the one above you. I know that every single person at Trans Pride was important to me during that march, and they continue to be important to me now after the march. My community, the trans and gender non-conforming community, gives me strength, gives me hope and love to continue each and every day. I may not be important to the world. I know that. I'm under no illusion that I am some vastly important figure. I know I'm not. I know that if I focus on my wife, my family, my friends, and my community within the trans community, then within those, I am important. There is power in community. Together we can and will make a difference. We will come together to make tomorrow a better world.